from a bunker in the heart of the Ozarks. A podcast that measures your intelligence by your sensitivity to our noise. It's Sif Pop. Welcome to Sif Pop Weekly, streaming live most Saturday mornings, or available to download later in your podcast feed, unless, of course, you're a patron.
Patrons get perks!
Patrons get those perks.
Woo!
I'm your host, Aaron Dicer, and he's had enough of turnip bread. It's Andrew Ormsby, ladies and gentlemen.
I have never had it, and I already am. Ahoy!
Each week we'll chat about movies, television, whatever else from the pop culture universe is on our minds. Good to have you back, my friend. Welcome.
Thank you.
Back to Sif Pop. You popped in to talk a little Black Adam last week, but you were feeling under the weather. So update us on your health. How you doing?
I feel great. It's just my voice, and I have a little bit of cough left. But other than that, I'm fine. It's kind of like how I was last week, except nowhere near as bad as the segment that you saw me for Black Adam, where I was about to die. Hey, let's talk about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, guys. That's pretty much how I was. But now I feel great. It's just
good. It's nice to have you on the mend. We are heading pretty full force into awards season. This is that time of year where you're going to start hearing a lot more of the reviews we're doing of movies that may be limited release, maybe aren't technically everywhere yet. That's already happened when we talked about some of the Fantastic Fest stuff. But that's going to happen more and more. Now, it also is headed into the holiday season, which means there's also going to be big movies as well. Like, for instance, next week, I think is, well, not next week, 2 weeks is Black Panther.
Yeah.
And that'll kick off a series of pretty big movies that are going to happen over the holidays. And when I say big, I also mean long. Apparently, some of the movies this winter are going to be super long. Damien Chazelle's new movie, it was announced, will be 320. I think, Babylon, and Avatar: Way of Water was announced to be like 315, something like that. So,
one I kind of expected to have a pretty good runtime to it.
I kind of feel like and we'll get into the show here, but I kind of feel like James Cameron I think he's a little bit anti, breaking up the movie and doing, some sort of intermission kind of thing. But I really wish once you hit 3 hours that movies would just do an figure out how to, do an intermission without hurting the film, right? Just find that place where it makes sense to let the audience take a break, go to the bathroom if they need to. But especially when your movie is called The Way of Water, I just think there's going to be a lot of sounds and noises that people are really gonna want to take a break there towards the middle. And I just think Cameron, of all people, could figure out how to do this creatively, right? If nothing else, he could have a 10-minute intermission where it was almost like this effects kind of test ground where he could do cool 3D stuff during it, and if people wanted to stick around for the intermission, they'd see cool underwater effects, or I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, he could have some fun with it, it seems like.
What struck me as funny was the fact that the first thing I thought of, and I don't know why, was one of those old cheap 90s screensavers, where they just have like the picture of blue water and then the gif of a fish going back and
flying
forth.
Toasters, that kind of thing. Yeah, but there will not be intermissions. That's not something movies do anymore.
No.
But yeah, so maybe just don't drink any water the day before, and then that's healthy, completely healthy. Just completely stop drinking water, and then go to the movie.
9 out of 10 doctors recommend it.
That's right. Speaking of award season, we've got a couple of awards. I almost said bait. That's a negative connotation. Awards contending movies that are looking to kind of be in that conversation. We're going to talk about Tar, and we're going to talk about All Quiet on the Western Front. The Best Ever Challenge is going to be Cate Blanchett movies because of her performance in Tar. And then we'll also, of course, get into some buried treasure along the way. You ready, Andrew? Ready to get into this?
Let's make it happen.
All right. Let's talk about Tar. The film, set in the international world of classical music, centers on Lydia Tarr, widely considered one of the greatest living composer-conductors and first ever female chief conductor of a major German orchestra. Cate Blanchett stepping into the conductor role here with the baton. Todd Field in the conductor role of the director. This is probably an attempt for many awards categories, I would imagine, as we head towards award season. Andrew, what did you think? Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
I'm going to go with really liked it. I really liked it. What about you?
I'm gonna join you there. Actually, I think that's where I landed too. High side of liked it. I really wanted to love this movie. I've heard a lot of positive buzz about this movie, so I went in primed to expect it to be something great, and it is something great. I think even beyond my own personal enjoyment or personal feelings, I think a good place to start is to just say, this is a great movie. Like, it's a really well done film. And if nothing else, you're going to come away impressed by performances, directing choices, cinematography choices. If nothing else, you could close your eyes and just listen to the music in this movie and it would blow your mind. The sound, this is one of those movies that doesn't feel like you would need to see it in a movie theater. But I'm highly recommending seeing this in a theater for the sound alone and how it envelops you with this classical orchestral music. Really impressive stuff. What about you? What were some of the things that you really liked about it?
Well, definitely the sound is one of the highlights of the movie for me. And I totally agree with you in your statement of saying that you need to see this in theaters, because you really do pick up on vicariously seeing or hearing the hypersensitive hearing that she has, like as she walks around her apartment. I think that a lot of that kind of stuff would be lost in like a home theater setup, regardless of how good of a setup you have. That is like one of the whenever I think of this movie, that's going to be one of the first things I think of. But obviously, the very first thing that if you bring up this movie, the first thing I'm going to think of is Cate Blanchett. Just is transcendent, I guess is the best word I can think of.
It's incredible. It's incredible work.
Yeah. She becomes a conductor. She becomes a composer. Just reading some of the things that she did to prepare for this role is astounding. She learned German. She
and you can tell it pays dividends in this movie.
It really does. It really does. I think that you understand what type of movie you're getting into during the very beginning. And actually, the very first two scenes of this movie are my two favorite scenes of the movie. That's not saying that the movie drops off, afterwards, but I'm saying that it does such an amazing job of introducing us to this character.
Just to clarify, that would be the interview scene.
The interview and then the Juilliard scene.
And then the Juilliard scene, yes. Okay, I wanted to make sure those are the two scenes you're talking about, yeah.
Correct, yeah. Especially that Juilliard scene.
The dialogue in that scene is just astonishing. It's just so well written.
And one of my favorite things is the lack of dialogue, like the physicality that's going on in that scene, along with by the way, that's all a one unbroken. It may have different cuts, but from what I understand of the filming, that entire Juilliard thing was a one take for the actors.
Oh, right. So, I think many of the scenes actually are like this. They're not one shots, right? We're not using the same camera. We are cutting to different cameras, but the idea is that it's real time and that it is one take, from what I understand. Correct. Many of those are. And that may be fudged here or fudged there, but for the most part, you're dealing with a group of actors who came together to live these long scenes, because these scenes are long. You say, the first two scenes were my favorite. Well, by the time we're done with the first two scenes, we're like 40 minutes into the movie.
25 minutes in, yeah.
So, it's that kind of movie, but it works somehow,
I don't know about you, but whenever it comes to movies like this, these are the movies that I've always found to be not awards bait, but movies that I always favor whenever it comes to awards contention. And that's whenever you have a film about an individual who is the master of their field, and seeing how that that title, I guess, of being a master in your field, how that bleeds over into every aspect of your life.
Hmm.
How that, uh, I guess you could say, the individual ceases and the craftsman begins. That may sound kind of pretentious, but I really do feel like that's what movies like this are trying to say. That people like Kate Blanchett's character, Tar, really cease to be a person and are only to themselves as well as everybody else around them. Uh, their craft. That's all that they are. Uh, what uh, what did you think of some of the performances in this movie?
Well, you mentioned Kate, and I'm blown away by her performance. I
Yeah.
think it would be uh, almost unfair to any of the other actors to play the comparison game, but they're all really good. Nobody in this movie doesn't feel authentic. Everybody in this movie feels like an authentic person in this world. Mark Strong is great. The girl that plays Olga, Sophie, I believe is the actor's name.
Mm.
She's incredible. Also an incredible cellist. By the way, everybody in this
It's a
movie
real orchestra.
played their own instruments that
Yeah.
amazingly. That blew my mind when I found that out. Like, and it made sense because it looked and sounded so authentic.
Yeah.
But to get, it's that sports movie thing, right? Where do you want a great actor or do you want a great basketball player, right? And to
Mm.
find both is almost impossible. And I feel the same way with like virtuoso musicians. Like, do you want a virtuoso musician or do you want a great actor? In this movie, I think found enough of both. I thought Sophie was great. I thought Nina Haas was great. Naomi Merlant was wonderful. Everybody is around, but this is Kate's movie. But everybody around her
Yeah.
is servicing that in a really beautiful way. I thought.
Oh, I 100% agree. Yeah, totally. It is shocking how talented some people are, that to where they could be, master musicians and still have the acting and have acting chops as well
Hmm.
to give a believable performance. What is your history with like classical music and stuff? Is this like
I'm a
a type?
I'm a big fan of classical music.
Mm,
I there is, I played in band in high school, and I love music. I've been a singer in different groups and things like that. But I'm not a virtuoso of anything musically. I just really enjoy the idea of music, how it makes me feel. I love how it puts me in touch with different emotions. And there's some of that beautiful language about music in this movie too that I really appreciated. Classical music is one of those things that is hard to really reproduce what you experience in a concert hall with an incredible orchestra, right? Like that's really hard to replicate in the home without a spectacular sound system, right?
yeah.
So whenever I get a chance to see an orchestra live, I am in. I want to hear all the classical stuff. It blows my mind. I haven't studied it an immense amount, but I don't listen to a lot of it like working out or, whatever. Because it's not the same experience for me. I think I've mentioned the Weird Al concert I went to was the one where he toured with a full orchestra, and it was one of the greatest things ever. And the pre-show of that concert was just the orchestra playing like movie soundtracks and stuff, and it was so great. It was so wonderful. So that's kind of my experience with classical music. What about you?
I've been to one symphony, and that was the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. Uh, it's forgettable for me because I think during the time I saw it, which was around high school, um, I kind of had that young person mentality towards classical music of, oh, come on, I want to go see a Gorillaz concert, or I want to go see, just classical music wasn't on my radar ever. So I
Hmm.
didn't appreciate it when I saw it. But I think if I were to go back now, that I would have, a more seasoned understanding of the, the true beauty behind some of these older classical composers and the work that they did. And I think that that's maybe why that Juilliard scene sticks with me so much, because uh, the thing that I think you're supposed to take away from that scene is uh, you have this modern look, or this modern viewpoint of some of these old composers, to where the focus for a lot of these young people isn't on the work itself; it's on the individual who composed it. And I really, I really like how that scene it finishes up. It's just such an amazing way of saying, like, what's more important, the individual who made it, or the composition itself, which is truly the important factor here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah. Do you have any negatives for this one?
I do. I think this movie, this is going to be a positive for me that rolls into a negative. Okay. So this is what keeps me from just flat out loving this movie. Now, if you listen to Sif Pop more than one episode, you know that themes and messages are always going to be prominent for me, and where I find a movie to be transcendent. I can find a movie to be a lot of fun, enjoy watching it. It's great. But then if you lock in a message or theme that I get to chew on and think about and process, then you're going next level. And this movie does that for most of the movie. This movie gives you a lot to think about in a surprisingly nuanced way about the idea of fallible heroes, the idea of what it means. Does art become less when the person creating the art becomes less, or we find out about their human fallibilities and who they are? Part of the beautiful Juilliard conversation has to do with, Bach and Beethoven and, these incredible perpetrators of amazing music, but also maybe perpetrators of things you don't want to think about, and you go back to any artist and go, okay, who were they as a human being? We certainly deal with that with filmmakers and all sorts of things. And this movie tackles it, and I feel like a very nuanced way for most of the movie, and in a way where you're not 100% sure how you're supposed to feel about the protagonist, which I kind of like. I kind of really enjoyed that. The movie is nuanced, so nuanced that you find yourself, and maybe it says something about me, and maybe other people have a different experience, which I totally understand and totally agree. Maybe other people are like, oh no, the protagonist was an evil person from the beginning. That's not what I felt like the movie was doing, and that's not what I felt like the performance was doing. I think the movie and performance were very much saying that this is a human, and that these are terrible things that this human has done with terrible consequences, and there should be repercussions for those terrible consequences. And I think the way this movie ends like final moment is saying these are the repercussions, these are the consequences. But all of that beauty, all of those messages, and this is where it turns in to a little bit of a negative for me. I never felt like the movie, on anything that it wanted to say, ever came to a place where it really landed its energy. It never seemed to really come to any kind of resolution towards the end of the movie where I felt like, oh, yeah, I get it. Yep. Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I don't want it to preach to me. I was glad it wasn't preaching to me. But it ended in and I don't mean the like ending last scene. I just mean like the third act resolution.
Yeah.
For me, felt a little light on, the ability for me to really understand its worldview, and that's okay. I don't mind the nuance. But I want something to react to think about, to chew on, and I don't feel like the movie gave me enough when all was said and done on the topics that it was painting and going for. How did you feel about all that? How did you feel about what the movie was saying?
I'm right there with you. Maybe a little bit more towards the negative side of it all. I do enjoy the fact that this movie deals a lot with insinuation. because I don't think that the movie ever comes out and fully blatantly says that the things that she's accused of actually happened. It's all insinuation from the movie's perspective of, yeah, it's pretty likely, like it's most likely this is the
Certainly it leans
case.
that way. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But we never see a scene, or we never see dialogue from her confirming any of these accusations. And hopefully this isn't spoilerish what we're kind of talking about here. I don't think it is.
We're
There has
talking
to be
around it,
there
I
has to
think.
be some kind of conflict in a movie, so you have to
Mhm.
understand that. Um, uh, but the fact that it does that, I was never able to commit to a just dessert for a character. You know, it's I don't mean to steal this quote from another movie based on music, but let's just say not my tempo. You know, towards the end, I think that the ending of this movie, so much was happening that it wasn't until after a specific scene was over that I was fully able to understand and grasp what I just saw. And by
Mhm.
that time, the movie had already moved on to the next part, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So it felt like the ending. I was trying to play catch up with a whole lot of it. Uh,
I
Go ahead.
my instinct is that what we're going for here is we're all human beings. We all have tendencies. We all have, desires, wants, ambitions, all of these things. And I
Yeah.
think what the movie is going for is if you can't pursue your ambitions and not be a crappy person, is it worth it? I think that's what the movie is going for, is saying, like, emphasize your angels and not your demons. And
Hmm.
for many people who find success, it's hard not to emphasize their demons. And I think the movie makes a pretty clear statement on the protagonist's actions being at least icky, if not terrible. And certainly some of the consequences of those quote unquote icky actions are extremely terrible. So I think the movie has a clear point of view on some of those decisions. And when it's all said and done, I think that's okay. I don't need the movie to paint starkly villains and heroes. That's good in some movies. That's not what this movie is about. But for me, I do want the movie to paint starkly in right and, like, not right and wrong even, but the idea of morality and ethics and where we're headed with the theme. So, and I'm trying to talk around plot stuff,
Sure.
but the movie says some interesting things, but I'm not sure it finds a way to land the conversation in a satisfying or interesting way. So that's just kind of where I land on that stuff. And that's the reason it keeps me from being in that wholehearted love, because there's so much of this movie that is entertaining, engaging. It takes a lot of skill to make a movie this talky feel this engaging. And I think it really does. And a lot of that, again, has to do with performances. But, one of the things we haven't talked about is Todd Field, who, 16 years since he's directed a movie? Little
Yeah.
Children was 2006. And it's only his third movie that he's directed. So, as far as a feature length film. So, yeah, In the Bedroom in 2001, Little Children in 2006, and then this. And, man, what I have a lot of respect for that, actually, for somebody just like, it's been 16 years, let's make a movie again,
Yeah.
and then just to do this and give Cate Blanchett this amazing opportunity. I cannot overstate how amazing she is in this movie. It's some of those conducting performances. And she's the one person in this movie that didn't necessarily have the musical background before being cast in this movie. Like, she had to learn a lot of that stuff, a lot of the musicality and how a conductor, would work. And man, she has got that virtuoso conductor thing nailed. So
Oh yeah.
it's really interesting.
Yeah. It cannot be understated how impressive it is to have a full, true, authentic orchestra right in front of you playing, and for you to give a performance that lends to that authenticity, like it's truly remarkable how well she prepared herself for this role.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, truly remarkable. I love how just personal and intimate this movie is. It's confined, yet the orchestra aspect lends itself to a level of grandeur
Mm-hmm.
that uh, is a nice compliment, I guess. It's composed brilliantly, and the fact that this movie is directed by Old Drippy from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah, that's the accolade that I hope Todd Field is known for at the end
Sure.
of his career. That he
Sure.
was in an episode of Aqua Teen Hunger Force's Old Drippy.
I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it'll be
Yeah.
paragraph 1 on his eventual obituary.
Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts about Tar?
There is a 2.5 hour post-credit scene.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
I did find that interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. I'm trying to think what a movie is trying to prove. By the way, we're talking about the fact that they ran a ton of the credits before the movie, and then also ran a ton of credits after the movie. I don't know. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish there, other than possibly, I know you're trying to say these people are important. I get they're important, but I didn't come here to sit through their names. And sitting through their names, do I remember any of them? Like if they're like, I don't know. I just don't know what you're trying to accomplish with that.
Well,
I find it annoying.
From what I understand, and I'm just spitballing here. I think that what the movie's trying to do is, because it's a black screen and then the titles for the crew pop up while this music is being sung in the background. I think that the movie is trying to say in the beginning, focus on the audio. The audio is going to be what really drives this movie. So if you can focus on the subtle sounds of nature and kids laughing in the background while this lady is singing this beautiful song, that's really what I think the movie is trying to say. Like, hey, focus on this. It could have been done better, though.
Yeah. My one final thing is that this movie is not without humor. There are some funny moments. There's a moment with an accordion that I thought was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. So it is not without humor. If you were thinking it might be a little self-serious, maybe it is on occasion, but it does have a few laughs and a few smiles along the way. So there you go.
I could totally understand. Oh, I'm sorry. I could totally understand somebody coming away from this movie just thinking it's pretentious awards bait movie.
Sure.
But I think that there's more here to it than that.
I think it would be hard to come away from this one feeling that way simply because of how dominant Blanchett's performance is. I think that alone kind of transcends it beyond just awards bait stuff. Like you watch this and you're in awe of what she's doing here. So yeah. That is Tar. It is in theaters. I think it's gone fairly wide this week, so you might be able to find it nearby if you want to check it out. All right, let's move on to our next review. Let's talk about All Quiet on the Western Front. Paul Ballmer and his friends Albert and Mueller, egged on by romantic dreams of heroism, voluntarily enlist in the German army. Full of excitement and patriotic fervor, the boys enthusiastically march into a war they believe in. But once on the Western Front, they discover the soul-destroying horror of World War I. Of course, All Quiet on the Western Front is a classic film that came out in like 1930. So it is almost 100 years old, the original. And this is a bit of a remake of that film with a lot more, let's say, depth and intensity and technological prowess behind it. What did you think of All Quiet on the Western Front, Andrew? I should also say it's on Netflix. Did you like it, love it, dislike it, hate it, or it was just okay?
I'm going to go with loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Very nice.
You?
I'm going to go with high side of liked it. And just couldn't quite stretch it into loved it for me, but I definitely think this is an astounding movie. Andrew, why don't you talk a little bit, since you're in the loved it category, about what you loved about this movie?
Well, like you said, it's an old movie and a novel, which I think is required reading in schools. Um,
Yeah, I should have
eh,
mentioned the novel as well. Yes.
yeah, I think I don't know about you, but we had to read it in middle school. And the big takeaway from the novel, and I think it's supposed to, also translate into this movie as well, and I think it does beautifully, is this is one of those very rare occasions where you see the story being told from the loser's point of view. A lot of war movies that we see are American war movies where we win, like World War II. So there's kind of this semblance, as horrific as a movie like Saving Private Ryan, for example.
Hmm.
As horrific and terrifying as that movie is, there's still a semblance of they're gonna win, in
It
the
could
end.
it could be argued every Vietnam movie ever
And I was
is.
about to say that,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
is that Vietnam is one of those examples where every single one you're like, oh, they're gonna lose, but this is from a point of view of this is the end of the war, roughly, and it's just horrifying. And in the beginning of this movie, all I could keep saying to myself is, "They're kids, they're kids," and it's so heartbreaking. Like it brought a tear to my eye seeing the at the beginning of this movie, whenever you see everybody getting their uniforms and standing in that stairwell as they're being given that call to arms speech, and just seeing the optimism and the the love of fatherland, and nothing nothing can get us down, like we're invincible. But at the same time, as an audience member, like it's going to be horrible, and there's not really a transition as well as so much as a uh, jumping out of a plane without a parachute, landing in reality. Sort of, it's just so immediate and sudden and shocking. It's it's a it's a beautifully told, for as much as the horror. I would say this is one of the most brutal and terrifying war movies I've ever seen. Um, but that lends itself to a level of authenticity, I believe.
I agree with all of that. I just recently, within the last couple years, I think during the pandemic, actually, during the early pandemic, watched the original 1930 movie and really
Mhm.
thought it was incredible for many of the same reasons that this movie is. And I think this movie honors the book and the original movie by keeping kind of that same tone, but advancing our ability to be there, the authenticity of the violence and the different things of what it would mean to be a soldier. One of the things in both movies is how quickly our protagonists realize how wrong they were about
Yeah,
their ideas. Because in most movies, the idea of a film generally is protagonist conflict, protagonist change, right? And that generally progressively happens through a movie. A protagonist learns something, becomes something gradually through the movie until the resolution is the new protagonist, their new view, their new situation, those kind of things. It's kind of storytelling 101.
yeah,
This movie, on the other hand, goes protagonist view, crisis right at the beginning, and then just, torture. Just,
yeah. It's
so
hell.
yeah, it's just like, and I think that's because that's authentic probably to many soldiers' experience with war. They think they know what they're getting into, and they don't realize, especially in this era of war that was so advance human beings to the front lines based, cannon fodder based, the how ridiculously brutal and nihilistic war is for the soldiers, for the human beings that sacrifice their lives for whatever cause they believe worthy. And the movie also, because it is from a German point of view, helps you, maybe empathize is too strong of a word, but helps you understand this idea of patriotism isn't righteousness. Patriotism isn't the be all and end all. And this idea of, sacrifice of those who have died for a country or a cause or those things in war, if you're not wrestling with the ugliness of it, no matter where you're approaching it from, patriotism can be delusion. And we have to be very, very careful that love of country doesn't result in a delusion that creates the loss of life when it doesn't necessarily need to be that way. Now, I'm not trying to make any kind of assessment on when war is good, when it's bad. My personal views as a pacifist are that it's always bad. That's fine. We can have that discussion as human beings who can agree to disagree on some things. But the idea of that feeling, I think this movie does a great job of going, oh, patriotism is just this thing that gets you to hell in this case.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's true for a German who fought in World War I. It's true for an American who fought in Vietnam. It's true for an American that fought in World War II. It's, which is often seen as the most righteous of wars. And, so no matter what it is, those inciting thoughts and feelings are real, and they're real for the German soldier, and they're real for the American soldier, and they're real for the French soldier, and it's not something that is unique to our country, and that's a valuable thing to explore, I think.
Yeah. It's the beginning, the opening of this movie. I'll just call it the recycling scene.
Mm-hmm, sure.
That itself, I think, is probably the most brutal, harsh reality
Mm-hmm.
type of way to start a movie, to give the audience the idea of where this country is
Mm-hmm.
during the war. And that in itself also lends itself to, whenever in the beginning of this movie you see the optimism of our protagonist, and the that feeling of righteousness and honor and stuff, that that you can tell, immediately, based off of that very first scene, that it's going to be a harsh reality and a harsh eye-opening. I think that Edward Berger does such a remarkable job of filming this movie, to have so much beauty and combined in a level of horror that I haven't seen in a movie in a very long time. Trench warfare, just is one of the most brutal, violent, horrible things you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfathomable that this type of thing happened. It's hard to put into words, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This movie is war. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. The movie,
100%.
and I think there is this just astonishing sequence of events that happens at the end of this movie that really brings home this perspective in a powerful and tragic way. And I'm not going to spoil that, other than to say it's clear that this movie has a very distinct point of view. It ends with some facts about World War I, specifically the Western Front, between as Germany was trying to push west, and those facts are just devastating. and in just a way that the movie says these are just facts. You know, these
Yeah.
are just numbers and facts, and yet think about what they mean. And for that, if nothing else, this movie is powerful and probably worth experiencing and investing your time in much the same way Saving Private Ryan is, or some of the other, you know, big war movies where they put you in the middle of it and go, no, 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 no. I need you to understand what war actually is. And that's, I do think that is valuable.
Yeah.
Where I kind of lean into the not loved it, but just really, really liked it camp is I think I'm to a place where in many ways I'm almost experiencing a horror movie for a lot of this.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I have to ask myself a personal question, which is, how does this edify me? Like personally, like how am I being edified in these moments? How am I being built up? And I don't, the only answers I have for this movie, and I think they're valid answers, are technical things. The use of sound in this movie, the use of color in this movie. Like I can watch this movie and be edified by going, wow, incredible filmmaking. Just there are shots in this movie that are really, really amazing and wonderful. But I'm not saying I can't be influenced or, you know, made to think deeper on this topic. But at what point do I go, I've seen enough young men, children get blown to bits on a battlefield for my life. You know what I mean? Like I'm partway through this movie and I'm just like, do I really need to see more of it? Like I get it. I understand. Like, and so there is that element for me personally. So this goes beyond the idea of a greater review, like how you might feel about this movie, those kind of things. But if you, like me, have this experience, I want to kind of, you know, warn you, you know, for that. I did. I got halfway, about 3/4 in, and I never wanted to turn it off, both because I know I have a job to do as far as, you know, thinking critically about the movie and letting the movie tell me the complete story and then talking about the movie afterwards. But if I didn't have this show, there would have been that inkling of, man, I just don't know that I need to see. I know how this ends. I don't need to see another body blown apart. I don't need to see another tragic instance of a completely pointless, loss of a young person's life. And that's the only reason I kind of don't teeter into that loved it camp, is because for me the movie became a bit torturous. So. Intentionally so. I'm not saying it's not intentionally so. I'm not sure personally how much more of that I need to see to get the point.
Yeah, you're not going to see any glorification in a movie like this.
Right.
And that in itself lends to a very difficult viewing experience. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I disagree with you, Aaron, because
No.
What I mean is, like, at the end, like as I'm watching this movie, I'm like, man, I don't know if I need this in my life right now, because if what the movie's trying to tell me is war is horrible and it sucks, I knew that already. So why put myself through this if I'm just going to come away with the exact same mentality that I did going into it?
Right. And if you learn something, like I'm always open to learn something. I'm always open for a movie to teach me something, make me feel something I haven't felt before. And it's unfortunate. It's so very unfortunate. But I don't know that this movie really teaches or tells me something I haven't been taught or told, before in other movies like that. Does that make it a bad movie? Not at all. I'm glad this movie exists. For some people, this will be the movie that teaches them those things, that puts them, in that place. For me, it starts to feel a little bit like warnography, if that makes sense. Like where it's reveling in the the destruction of it all, not in a celebratory way,
No, it's not
but
glamorous.
just in a I'm going to keep showing you the absolute grotesqueness of what this is.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, at what point, where is that line where it becomes gratuitous? And I don't know. I honestly don't know.
yeah.
So yeah.
Well, it's like people ask all the time, why do they keep making war movies? They all say the
Mhm,
same thing.
mhm.
And to that, I would go, well, they keep having wars.
Yeah.
So the whole point of a war film is to show you how unglamorous and how terrifying and how awful it is.
I mean,
So
that's
what?
not necessarily the point of every war film. There are certainly World War II war films that are celebratory and,
Oh,
meant to
okay,
show you.
you're gonna have movies like Inglorious Bastards and stuff like that.
Right.
But from what I'm trying to say is, even those movies, they're still terrifying and
Hmm.
horrible. There's still an underlying notion, maybe not so quite on the nose as some movies like Saving Private Ryan or 1917 or Platoon, even, just going
Hmm.
across all these famous war movies that really stand the test of time. They all say the same thing: war is hell. We need to stop doing this to each other. And
Hmm.
we're going to keep getting war films so long as we keep going to war.
And I'm also well aware that pacifism is a privilege. Pacifism is a privilege of my own life, my own existence, and I'm fully aware that viewpoint is much easier for some than others. I totally get that. But and that's part of why these movies exist as well. But yeah, I think it is definitely one of those movies, and we can just kind of go to the one last thing, which for me is I if you haven't yet had that moment of understanding the grotesqueness, the gruesomeness of war, this is valuable. I genuinely think it's valuable to tell hard stories, horrible
Mm,
stories. I think that's not only okay. I think it's important. And in that way, I would encourage you. If you aren't as sensitive as maybe I am to the pain of and pointlessness of war, if it's something that it's not going to impact you in such a negative way, or at least, and when I say that, it's a matter of degrees. I'm not saying, hey, if you're the person that loves watching bodies get blown up, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there are degrees of how that impacts people, and you can watch this and not have that negative impact in your heart and soul, then it is a spectacular movie to watch. There are scenes in this movie that I would recommend outside of the grotesqueness of war. There are incredible scenes of um, friendship and
camaraderie, yeah.
camaraderie and those kind of things. There are incredible moments of visual stunningness. There's a lot here to be respected. So that's kind of my one last thing is this is a movie that I wholeheartedly think is important and would be a powerful watch for anyone who watched it. So don't take my own hesitations and reservations and experience for the movie to mean that it's a bad movie or one that you shouldn't watch. So what about you, Andrew?
Final thing, besides no post-credit scene, I would say that a movie like this is also important for the simple fact that it's being told to an American audience about German soldiers, and the takeaway that this movie is famous for in Western, as in not Germany,
Mm-hmm.
is they were people too. It's very
Yeah.
easy to see in a movie, in a war film, like, I know this isn't World War II, but like Nazis and stuff, as being something other than human, being
Mm-hmm.
monsters. But I think that you need a movie like this to remind you that they were people, they were kids, and they were
Mm-hmm.
scared too.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right, that is All Quiet on the Western Front. It is available now on Netflix. Before we head into the best ever challenge, just a reminder that you can support what goes on here at SIFPOP through Patreon, patreon.com/SIFPOP. Fan funding is something that has been part of kind of podcasts and YouTube channels and that kind of thing for a while now. And it's been really interesting to see that people love what goes on here enough to throw a couple bucks our way every month to say, hey, keep doing it. Thank you so much to people who do that for us. Just had someone increase the amount that they're supporting us with. That means a lot to us.
Nice.
It really does allow us to keep the website going, which I'm really proud of the ability of the SIFPOP website to reach out to people who are curious about being, writing about pop culture, writing about movies, and give them a space where they can find a little bit of an audience to see if it's something they want to pursue further in their life. So yeah, it's been a really fun, interesting thing to see where SIFPOP goes, and we've only been able to do that because of the support of some amazing SIFPOP members at Patreon. So patreon.com/SIFPOP. You can check it out there. You can see the different levels. It starts at $3 a month and the different things that happen. We also do a separate podcast each week, most weeks, where we talk about different things. We just finished up a run on House of the Dragon season 1 in that, and thinking about talking about maybe other shows like Andor, those kind of things, as well as other pop culture topics. So if you're interested in any of that, head out to the Patreon, patreon.com/SIFTPOP, SIFTPOP. And thank you for even considering it. We appreciate it. All right, let's move on to the best ever challenge, best ever Cate Blanchett movies.
Do you want if we take 1 second here? I got to run to the restroom real quick.
Sure, go for it. I'll hang out with the live chat for
Thank you.
a little bit. Yeah, you're good. I see Doc in the live chat. I see Joe and Jay Bourgeois. Thank you guys for hanging out. There's, according to the numbers, a few more people. If you have anything that you want to talk about, let me know. Doc says, award season. Oh boy. I never know if that's sarcastic or not, because for me, it's real. I really do get excited for award season this time of year. I know there's a lot to lampoon and make fun of with awards, but at the same time, award culture and celebrating great film, I believe, is one of the main things keeping us from a situation where all movies are just about making money, where it's just about the big Marvel movies and, DC movies and Star Wars movie and just these big money maker machines, IP machines, which, by the way, I love a lot of those movies, so I'm not against them. But award season to me is the carrot, where it's like, no, people are going to keep making exciting, interesting storytelling things, because there's some things that can be gained from the exposure that comes with award season, including monetary gain. So it kind of allows those things to be a little more prominent in what goes on. So when I say award season, oh boy, I mean it. But some people are like, oh boy, award season, here we go. So Evan is hanging out with us. Hey, Evan. And then asks on Twitch, is it better to be on the Twitch chat or YouTube chat? Now, as far as we're concerned, they are the same. We see them in the same place. So for show reasons, whichever environment you like better is fine. For live stream stuff, Twitch is more originally geared that way. YouTube has moved that way. So I don't know if there's other things to be gained there. We have not taken advantage necessarily of Twitch in all the ways that Twitch can be used. But as far as chat goes, I think you're good at either place. Doesn't necessarily matter. So Jay Bourgeois also saying the use of color in All Quiet on the Western Front is stunning. Yes, absolutely. It's really, really beautiful. All right, Andrew, let's kick into the best ever challenge. I'll go ahead and give us another clean intro.
Yeah.
Let's move into the best ever challenge. We're going to talk about best ever Cate Blanchett movies. We will go number 5 to number 1. And of course, if somebody has a movie higher, they can
Drop
They can do that. So, Andrew, let's start with you. What is your number 5 Cate Blanchett movie?
She's been in a couple. Just a couple
Yeah,
movies.
totally.
Number 5, I'm going to go with Thor Ragnarok.
Me too.
Hey! She's great in this, too. I love her interpretation of hell. It's... I think that this is the funniest of all the Marvel movies, but it doesn't sacrifice humor for story. Or, I mean, it doesn't sacrifice story for the humor. And I think that that's where Thor Love and Thunder kind of fell short, is it prioritized the comedy over the story at hand.
Yeah.
But I think that this movie was a perfect combination of both telling a great story and being a funny movie at the same time.
Yeah, Thor Ragnarok, I don't know that I love it as much as some people do, but it's a really great movie, and it's really fun. She's really fun in it. There's elements of her tar performance in this performance, which I find interesting. But yeah, it's just imbued with Taika Waititi's sense of humor and everything that he does. And yeah, Thor Ragnarok's a great watch. Glad to have it at number 5. Let's move on to our number 4s. What do you got at number 4?
This is where I have The Aviator.
Oh, okay. That was in my honorable mentions.
One of my favorite movies. Howard Hughes is such a fascinating character, and seeing Cate Blanchett play Mrs. Hepburn is, I mean, she's perfect. I mean, she nails it. I love. This is kind of the mad genius effect, and I think that Howard Hughes is seen as one of the mad geniuses of an era, and seeing what that kind of mentality can do mixed with, at the time, unlimited financial resources, what can be achieved and what can be dared, I guess. I love this movie. Scorsese and DiCaprio. This is right around the time that they started working a lot together and realizing that they're perfect for each other. So, yeah, absolutely love The Aviator.
I need to watch it again. I really do. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but yeah, I like that movie. I definitely like that movie. My number 4 is a movie that keeps on growing on me, even though it just came out. Don't Look Up is my number 4. I know a lot of people really didn't like this movie. In fact, I know a lot of people hated this movie. I just think it's such perfect satire, and some of the performances are the kind of performances that great actors don't often get to give, where they get to be completely unhinged. And I think Leo's doing great stuff in this. I think Jennifer Lawrence is doing great stuff in this. Meryl Streep is doing great stuff in this. But Cate Blanchett as the news person in this is just so perfect. I think it's her and Tyler Perry, right? Play the newscasters together, the kind of that typical
that Good Morning America sort of thing.
Yeah, sort of thing. And it's just so well done. I think this is a really good movie, and I have it at number 4.
I'm with you. I'm a defender of this film. I think
I
think it's a lot of fun, and it has something to say.
Yes, sure does. Number 3, Andrew. What do you got at number 3?
Number 3, I have your favorite movie of all time, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
This did not make my honorable mentions, but go ahead. Tell us about how amazing this movie is.
I absolutely adore this movie. This is right around Wes Anderson peak, not trying to, I guess, be a household name. He's just trying to be weird as possible, and this movie is as weird as it can possibly get. I think that I don't know what it was between this and Moonrise Kingdom, but he found something to where his movies can be universally adored, as opposed to young hipsters who just think that this is just the bee's knees. But I love this movie.
He did seem to find an accessibility button at some point. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I don't know what he did differently, really. Like, because I think that he
made a good
humor,
movie. I'm just kidding. I'm just
Sa-
I'm just messing with you.
Savage. But I think that the dry humor and the blank, deadpan delivery of the actors is the same in like Moonrise Kingdom as it is here. I think that the characters are just as lovable and fallible here. Actually, I think that Steve Zissou is a great comparison for Tar because it's about a person who is, at the top of their field,
Mhm.
who is, highly regarded and revered. And, but once you get to know them as a individual, they're not really a great person.
Mhm.
So, but I love this
Yeah.
movie. I think it's definitely not for everybody. You have to know who you're recommending it to.
Yeah. Yep.
Not Aaron.
Not me. Not me. But that's okay.
You're number 3.
My number 3 is How to Train Your Dragon 2. It is not my favorite How to Train Your Dragon movie. That is the first one. However, it is an incredible movie. Enough so that when I saw it, I actually ranked it higher than the original How to Train Your Dragon. That has since changed upon rewatch. But it takes everything about these characters in the first movie that I thought was cool, that I thought was fun. This is my Game of Thrones. So,
Game of Thrones light.
a little bit different. But I really, really enjoy these movies. I think they're funny, but also meaningful. And How to Train Your Dragon 2 is a good one. So that's my
Very
number
nice.
3. Number 2, Andrew, what do you got?
Funniest movie ever made. Hot Fuzz.
My number 2 as well.
Yay. I wonder what our number 1's going to be.
I wonder.
Yeah. This is what I consider the best. Now I'm having a Edgar Wright film.
Yeah,
I think this is the
Cornetto
best Edgar
trilogy.
Wright. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I would just say it's his best film. Like even outside like Baby Driver or Last Night in Soho. It's a movie that is so infectiously funny. You can tell everybody who is making this movie was just having the time of their life, and that carries through in the performances, and the audience feeds off of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great comedy, it's a great parody, and it's a great cop drama too. Like the actual murder mystery elements of it, and like the cop trying to figure it out. That's all intriguing. This is a near perfect film.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It is just a joy to watch from beginning to end. It is just, it's engaging as a comedy. It's engaging as an action movie. It's engaging as drama. Yeah, all three things work in this movie. So yeah, I'm with you. Yarp indeed. Number 1, probably no surprise. It is the movie known as
Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Curious Case of Benjamin Button. And by that, we mean the Curious Case of Gollum Button.
Gollum, yeah.
Lord of the Rings in at number 1, which Sif Pop listeners know we consider one movie. Those first 3 Peter Jackson films are a single film divided into 3 parts, and it lands in at number 1 for both of us. Why don't you talk on it, Andrew?
What can be said that we haven't said a million times over? I just recently did a sit through of the 4K enhanced extended edition, and just it's cinematic brilliance. I haven't watched Rings of Power beyond the first 2 episodes, so I can't really compare it to the new, but this will stand the test of time as like one of, if not the greatest movie series ever made.
Yeah, and we've talked many times. The Hobbit, the main mistake the Hobbit made is it just tried to make 3 movies out of one. It should have been just one movie and tightened up, and I think it would have been spectacular.
Aaron.
But money. You don't want any butt money.
You don't want butt money. No.
So the TV show, I'm on record as saying I love. I am all the way through all but the finale. I haven't watched the finale yet, and I am still absolutely loving it. It is bringing me all those wonderful Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings vibes in a new context with new characters. Well, some new characters, some that we know. including Galadriel. But I'm really enjoying where they're taking that story and some of the history they're giving, and I think it's working really, really well. What a fun universe! What a fun fantasy universe to explore, and these movies. There's so much care. There's so much love and care in these movies. All right, honorable mentions. You want to throw yours out first?
Yeah, I'll go through them real quick. A brilliant movie which I absolutely adore that nobody saw, Babel. I
Yes.
really enjoyed Babel. Cate Blanchett and Brad Pitt, their storyline is so intriguing, yet it's not the focal point of the movie. There's like so many different stories being told over different cultures, different languages, playing off Tower of Babel. I just think that this is a criminally underseen movie. I think it's really good.
Yeah.
Um,
Any others?
Yeah, let's go with Mowgli, the new
I had that one
Andy
too.
Serkis. This might be my favorite interpretation of this work.
Yeah.
I think that it's there's a couple scenes that bring a harshness to the reality of the situation that you don't get from the Disney version.
Right.
There's no bare necessities. You get your childhood pet wolf's head mounted right in front of you.
Yep.
I haven't seen this movie since it came out, and I really do need to revisit it. And that's The Talented Mr. Ripley.
Yeah, I revisited it recently, and it holds up. It's really, really good. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I need to do that then. And we did mention it jokingly, but I actually do really enjoy this movie, and that's A Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Nice.
It's a long movie, and I can understand why people just get bored to death with it, but I was intrigued from beginning to end.
Only ones that you didn't mention that I have. I really enjoyed the live action Cinderella. I think is really good stuff and well worth mentioning. And then Eyes Wide Shut, probably also worth mentioning in the conversation.
It's in my what do we call it? Our list of shame.
Eyes Wide Shut is
Eyes Wide Shut.
Yeah. I don't feel like knocking off, a movie like that off a list of shame is ever going to be a bad idea. So, Kubrick is always one that even if you don't like it, you're going to be glad that you've processed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. All right, that just leaves us with our buried treasure for the week. What is that one thing in any area of pop culture you want to let people know about? I'll kick us off. I have a habit of restating things that I love in this segment. So forgive me. Have I talked about The Patient on Hulu?
Don't believe so.
So The Patient is just finished up its first season. So even if I had talked about it early on, I do want to talk about the first full season. And it follows Steve Carell as a therapist who has a patient played by Donald Gleason, who is a serial killer. And he starts to open up to Steve Carell about this, and Steve Carell can tell like he's not fully open, like he's not saying he's a serial killer. He's just kind of opening up about some of his feelings, and Steve Carell can tell there's something deeper there, and so he kind of suggests like this is never going to work unless you're honest with me and talk to me honestly about what you're feeling and thinking. So Donald Gleason kidnaps him and locks him in his basement, and they have therapy there. And what's amazing about this show, and I won't give anything else away, is how authentically it feels like if this really happened, these would be the reactions and situations of what's going on. Steve Carell is so good in this. And as is Donald Gleason, this is one of those shows that would have been an incredible movie. And I sometimes feel that way with these limited series where it's like, man, I want to see the movie version of this that's kind of tightened up a little bit. But I'm also glad I saw the TV version of it. So, that's kind of a little cognitive dissonance. But I would highly recommend it. It is on Hulu. It's a Hulu original, and I think it's well worth making your way through. The whole season is there. I believe it's 10 episodes, and they're short. They're like 25, 30 minutes episodes. So again, 10 of those get you to, basically 4 or 5 hours of content. So yeah, The Patient on Hulu, I think, is worth your time.
Nice. Maybe I'll pick that up next year whenever I finally finish Dahmer, because I have to wait like a week in between every episode of that show.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, I don't know if I can handle another serial killer show right now.
Yeah, I totally understand. What do you got?
Well, it's spooky season, Aaron. In a couple days,
Spooky season.
Halloween, and I figured, you know what, we talked a little bit about Halloween literally Halloween movies on the show recently, and how much we hated them. That I'm going to recommend it for my buried treasure. I'm cheating because we talk about this movie constantly, but I think that if you're going to watch a like scary movie during Halloween, you can't choose anything better than Cabin in the Woods, because it's the perfect Halloween movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny, it's scary, it's intriguing, it's fresh, it's unique, and it has one of I would consider one of the greatest scenes in all of cinema, and that's the elevator purge. I mean, it's just so satisfying and gruesome and brutal, but it's over so quickly that you don't really get grossed out by it. I've seen a couple people who are on my friends list who are like, I watched Cabin in the Woods for the first time, and I had no idea what I was getting into, and I loved every single second of it. So yeah, I think Cabin in the Woods is the perfect Halloween movie.
It looks like Cabin in the Woods is available for rental or purchase. I don't see it streaming for free anywhere. But yeah, I completely associate myself with Andrew's comments. It is the perfect slasher film because it's a parody of a slasher film that is also a slasher film itself in some ways.
And that's why Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz work. We were talking about them earlier. It's because they don't sacrifice one for the other. Shaun of the Dead doesn't sacrifice being a good zombie movie for being a good comedy zombie movie. Same with Hot Fuzz. It's a good cop action film at the same time that it's funny. And I don't think that you're going to find any movie out there at all like Cabin in the Woods. It's so fresh and unique.
Yeah. There you go. That's Cabin in the Woods. You can rent or purchase that on most platforms. And then The Patient, which is a TV show on Hulu. We did it, Andrew.
Woo.
I'm
proud of us.
We did a podcast. It has happened. We didn't even have to become jerks and abuse people below us to do it. So
as much fun as that is.
Thank you so much for joining us for Sif Pop Today. It is part of the Studio DNA Podcast Network. Find out more about other shows on the network at studiodna.media. You can also search Studio DNA in your podcast player. Huge thanks to Andrew for hanging out with me again today.
Well, thanks, buddy.
And thank you to producer Phil for producing the audio and video show.
Thanks, Phil.
Much love and gratitude to our Sif Pop members for giving monthly to make Sif Pop a real thing. Support starts at $3 a month. You can check out all the details at patreon.com/SifPop. Lots of ways to connect with us. Feel free to leave a comment, a rating, or a review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. You can also email us, feedback@sifpop.com. And finally, if you're having a good time, your movie-loving friends will probably like this show too, so make sure you let them know about it and that listening is much easier than nailing an Elgar cello solo. We will be back next week, probably with Banshees of Inisherin, as well as Armageddon Time. Those are the two I'm thinking of right now. That can always change, but hopefully you'll be back with us, and we'll talk movies then. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, live chat, for the hang. Appreciate you guys coming out live. And kind of already said hi to you in the middle there, but wanted you guys to know that we appreciate you and we love you, and let us know if there's anything you ever want to hear. So thanks. We'll see you guys.
I got an hour